You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Hello, and we are live from London XL at MCM Comic Con London. This is episode 195 of Making Tracks. I'm Mark, one of your co-hosts, and joining me this week, holding the Zoom recorder with a rather shaky hand. You must have had too much to drink last night. It's Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm recovered now.
Excellent.
It was a close call last night. Couple too many shandies, but all good now. All good.
Wicked. How are you finding MCM?
I tell you, I didn't know what to expect because you never really know what to expect from a lot of shows. They've really made great use of the space. Big hall, which is brilliant. Lots of room, which I like. Loads of families. Nice and busy. It was roasting hot yesterday. It's a bit cooler today.
Yeah, no, I the thing is, you can see right down the end. It's a long hall. So you've got XL, for those who don't know, is basically two massive exhibition halls on the left and the right. So the South Hall and the North Hall, and literally it just extends for miles and miles and miles. So I think this is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, MCM Londons that I've been to in a long time. Definitely after the pandemic. And I would say, when you looked at the floor plan, and as you realise how much stuff was here, I think it's probably still bigger than Celebration Europe last year was.
That conversation actually came up earlier. It's obviously the same location for people who aren't familiar with the UK and our convention centres. It's the same place that Celebration Europe's been held 3 times now.
Yep.
And they've really utilised as much of the space as possible. There are other exhibitions here. There's that Disney 100 exhibitions here. There are other things here, but for the big halls, they've really gone for it. And yeah, it's a nice atmosphere today. It's Sunday right now. It's a nice atmosphere. It's, as I say, it's a bit cooler, but they've thought this one through. Everything looks just peachy, actually. The layout's good. Lots of anime stuff.
Yeah, I mean, since I started coming here, probably about 2012, the anime scene, as it were, in like large conventions has massively increased, and exponentially so here in London, which is fantastic because it creates a whole world of characters that I have no idea are. So there's always fantastic costumes and cosplays walking around, and you're like, that's really cool. Can't even begin to tell you which kind of property it's from. Again, there's just so many people here, and obviously today's Sunday, you've got the Mandalorian panel later on at 1 p.m. So I've already started to see probably a few more Star Wars costumes here this day than there was in the previous 2 days. However, it's good fun, and it's still nice and early. We're still like not even 11 o'clock, so only the priority guests are here. It means that we can walk around the show floor, and we won't have to bump into too many people.
Should we start walking?
Let's do it.
Hopefully podcasting will be able to hear that we are now in motion. So, Star Wars news, which is kind of our stock in trade. George Lucas, he got his Honorary Palme D'or this weekend. Fantastic news that he got it. It was a very emotional ceremony as Francis Ford Coppola came out and gave him the Palme D'or. There's some lovely footage on the site at the moment. If you hit socials and hashtag George Lucas, you'll find all of that stuff out there. What do you make of that? I mean, I think we've spoke about it before, obviously. One of the most deserved and long overdue Palme d'Ors probably in history. The fact that just as he turns 80, and on Star Wars Day, 25th of May as well, which is a big anniversary day for Star Wars. Very, very special, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, fantastically special. And I mean, like you said, it was overdue, but also there's a timing, isn't there, issue with like giving lifetime achievement awards. You don't want to give them too early, that basically people feel a little bit insulted that they're kind of done and they're now like irrelevant. Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's nice and prominent. It's been a nice, distance and time between when he left Lucasfilm and sold it to Disney to now that, we can kind of be quite happily reminded of like the input that George has always given to Star Wars, and obviously as a founder and creator of Lucasfilm and of the Star Wars franchise, he's given us a gift that 45 years on keeps on giving.
Very true, yeah. He seems more at ease now, I think, with his place with Star Wars. I mean, what are we now, 12 years on since he sold it?
Yeah.
Long time retired, made it very clear that he didn't want to or doesn't want to make any more films, not just Star Wars films, any films. He's happily retired. But he did say a few things. He sat down in a few conversations about, obviously, diversity in casting and picking the right moments to say certain things. One of the questions was whether or not Star Wars was too white. And his response to that was, they would say it's all white men. He says, most of the people are aliens. The idea is you're supposed to accept people for what they are, whether they're big and furry or whether they're green or whatever. The idea is that all people are equal. I think as Star Wars fans, we've accepted that, certainly within the realms of the galaxy far, far away. It's a shame that all these years later, 47 years later, George, the guy that wrote that back in the mid-70s, still has to say that out loud.
Yeah. I think that probably just shows, obviously, how a hot topic diversity is in film and pop culture. But one of the things that we notice when we come to these big conventions is how Star Wars is represented. Yesterday I went down to the Star Wars costumers meet-up outside for some photo shoots. All genders, all ages, all races were in Star Wars costume, and that meant that you had Asian and you had black guys as like Anakin Skywalker, and you had guys and girls dressed up as like the opposite gender costume to that. And so like I think it kind of is a barrier in some respects, because obviously you connect with people that you see on screen, and if the person that you are isn't necessarily represented, then you don't necessarily have the same kind of connection. But then there are different ways, and through stuff like the expanded novels, they found ways to include diversity in a much more inclusive way that hopefully is starting to kind of like filter down onto the screen. So,
and being at a place like this, we talked about anime, and the costumes are fantastic. They're all around us right now as we speak. And there couldn't be more of a mix of guys wearing the characters of the girl characters and vice versa, and everything in between and outside of that, however you want to delineate it, which is fascinating to see just as a person walking around the stairs and corridors of a show like MCM. But also George did mention about discrimination. He said that was a way of saying that people are always discriminating against something, and sooner or later that's what's going to happen. I mean, we're already starting with AI saying, well, we can't trust those robots. So I do know in a later interview he was asked about AI. And of course this is a guy who was at the cutting edge of visual effects and all the other stuff that he was leading the charge on back in the day with Lucasfilm. I love the thought that George, even now, is still making comment on things like AI, which is becoming more and more prevalent in our daily lives.
It's a concern, as somebody who works in the creative industry, you get two sides of a coin. You very much get like the people who are in fear for their jobs because they think that the computers and the AI is going to just take over everything. And then there's the other people, and people that I tend to agree with, who are much more kind of like open to it and realise that, like with everything, it's a tool. I read something really interesting the other day, and I can't remember who to quote it from, but basically they said, you think that like in the 100 odd years of film, there's probably only been about 10,000 standout, heavy-hitting kind of films that have affected the zeitgeist and maybe even changed society. So to then start worrying about how the introduction of AI is going to take away the writer's job is probably a little bit early, because all of that has to be inputted and it has to be sourced and it's not like the AI just comes up with stuff in thin air. It has to be given the information. It's like doing the research. You have to do the research before you can kind of write a paper. And it's the same kind of thing. So I'm sure that we can tell AI now, and I've done it. I've prompted ChatGPT, write me the opening chapter for a new Ian Fleming James Bond book in the style of Ian Fleming. I've given it the prompt, said basically to pick up from where No Time to Die left off. So James Bond is dead. What happens? And it does it, but obviously you can see that it's taking your prompts and it's literally spinning it. And the thing is with the creative thing is that you start with one prompt and you might be going down one direction, but by the end of it, you're in a completely different location. And that is, I think, the fantastic part of the human imagination and the creative desire. So, okay, if that process can be slimmed down a little bit and maybe made more efficient to help smaller productions become bigger, and to help bigger productions not waste so much time, and to possibly even see the kind of upheaval that we have with Lucasfilm, whereby they greenlit stuff and then things get kind of parked and stuff, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, I guess it's still too early. I mean, we're way past the date when Skynet was meant to take over from Terminator 2.
We are a few
that
years
hasn't
past
happened.
that.
So,
No, that's true.
I think we're good for at least another few years.
Well, certainly our generation are okay. I'm not so sure about the younger ones, but that's their problem.
Exactly, we won't be around. Hopefully by then they'll all be constricted. So
We'll be just heads bobbling along in glass jars.
I'll tell you what, I'll be well up for that. A nice Bomar monk spider. That's the afterlife for me, I reckon.
Bomar Moncaster.
Yeah.
That could be the thing, couldn't it? It is funny though that Lucas did talk about the resistance that people like Spielberg and Scorsese had to moving from film to digital, and now most of them have moved from film to digital because cinema as an art form, as you say, it's over a century old, a fair bit over a century old now, but nevertheless that is fairly small span of time for the tech to have moved as insanely fast as it has.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talk about it in relation to the Star Wars galaxy. We're at the exponential curve of technological development right now, and that curve is going to level out, which is kind of what we kind of see in Star Wars, which is why you kind of go, well, they had hyperspace travel 10,000 years ago, and it hasn't really improved much by the time of the High Republic.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I guess, where we're going to head. There's only going to be some, to a point whereby things are going to completely take off from that. And we'll get there.
We will. One other thing that he said, he mentions discrimination, racial and sexual discrimination in the trilogies that he did. He says in the first one there were a few Tunisians who were dark, and in the second one I had Billy Williams, and in the prequels, which they were also criticising, I had Samuel Jackson. He wasn't a scoundrel like Lando, he was one of the top Jedi. He also responded to criticism about the depiction of women. He says, who do you think the heroes are in these stories? What do you think Princess Leia was? She's the head of the rebellion. She's the one who was taking this young kid who doesn't know anything, and this boisterous, I know everything guy who can't do anything, and trying to save the rebellion with these clowns. And it's the same thing with Queen Amidala. You can't just put a woman in pants and expect her to be a hero. They can wear dresses, they can wear whatever they want. It's their brains and their ability to think and plan and be logical. That's what this hero is. So, it's completely correct, isn't he? There may not be loads of women in the original two trilogies, but nevertheless, the ones that are in there are leading the charge.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's all from a certain point of view, isn't it?
It is.
And the thing is, I mean, this is where we are. The thing is, the films are 40-odd years old plus, and so therefore
they're of their times.
They are kind of now of their times, and maybe there could have been stronger women, but then you just see how things have moved on, and you look at the sequel trilogy. And sorry, Grandpa Simpson's completely put me off. Yeah, I mean
that's a mirror. Don't try and fool.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, he's got a point. The films now are of their time, and I think you have to accept those for what they are, and I guess can use that as a benchmark, and then do better and find ways to include more people. I think there was a very good analogue in Star Wars for the depiction of the gender-typical white male as represented by the Empire, and you could say there's a lot of subtext behind that and a reason why he went down that. It wasn't just to exclude women, but he was kind of doing it with a creative choice.
That's a great point you make, though. Weirdly, as a slight tangent, you look at the original trilogy, the white blonde-haired males were the bad guys.
Yeah.
Which is as much of a cliche as the women being a damsel in distress, and now you move on and you've got diversity in villains as much as you've got diversity in heroes. So it is, as you say, it's a progression all the way through, isn't it?
Both me and you, we're white middle-aged men, certain age, certain disposition, shall we say.
Yep.
So, we have our opinions, and there'll be people listening to this who will completely disagree with us, which is totally fine.
Of course it is.
And, the discourse for this kind of thing, I think is healthy to have it in a constructive way, which I think is why stuff like the High Republic series is going to, I think, probably open that diversity door even wider, which is going to be exciting.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So we're at the Dark Empire stand at MCM London. I'm here with KT. How has the weekend gone so far?
So far it's been absolutely brilliant. Lots of people coming through, converting people to the dark side, as you would expect from the Dark Empire and the Sith.
You've not been going in the UK that long, so how has it gone, the initial push?
So we've actually been around I've been with the club for 10 years now, but we've not really been out there publicly, and it was a celebration last year when we teamed up with the rest of the Galactic Senate clubs and then that gave us the opportunity to expand. We started before Celebration with 2 members, we're now up to 11, and recruitment is going strong.
That is a nice little upsurge. That's pretty cool.
Yes, absolutely, and some of that working with Sabre Guild because they have Sith as well, and some of those members are coming across. But yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant this year so far, and we just hope to expand further. And more Sith are coming your way.
Mark knows this because he's a member of multiple clubs, as well as and including the Rebel Legion. Is that a benefit to you guys that you'll have people at various events that can sort of double dip, if you like?
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you've got light coverage in one area and someone's got a costume that's cleared, they can then represent us where normally we might not have had a presence.
And what's the plans for the future? I mean, obviously, Galactic Domination, of course.
Aside from Galactic Domination, expand the club and break out bigger stands, better presentations, so that people know we're here and we're not going anywhere.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
No problem.
Hey, it's Kyle Newman, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So we've continued our walk around the halls. We're now walking past the autograph area. Mostly voice actors, mostly anime, but also a nice sizable little chunk of Star Wars folks here, which always seems to pull people in. I mean, Jim Cummings is here. I mean, Winnie the Pooh and Taz and Tigger and Lion King and Hondo Anaka. I mean, he's done it all, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. And actually, we inducted him, I think, at an MCM London, probably about 2018, I think.
Yeah.
Just kind of grabbed him, and he was very, very nice, very appreciative of that, and chucked us some autographs and stuff. So that's cool.
That is very cool. It's very cool. We're now, about 10 days away as we speak from the arrival of the Acolyte. The premiere happened in the States just at the tail end of last week. The UK premiere is happening on Tuesday, yeah, so it's all kicking off, it's all getting up and running. What's your vibe at the moment? I know we talk about it a lot, but we're still ahead of the show coming. There's Emily Swallows and Brendan Wayne and Tamira Morrison's tables over there. So there's your Mando contingent. But Acolyte, we're still ahead of it coming. But how do you feel now? Have you noticed a slight shift in the attitudes towards it the more teasers we get?
Yeah, I think so. I think people are getting a better idea of the kind of show it's likely to be. And I think there's been more actual focused discussion about the show by like Leslie Headland and people like that, on the promotion circuit. So I think that's helped. I think with everything, Star Wars fans are like most people. They don't like change and they don't like new things, I don't think. And so there's a portion of people who are like, well, if it's based around the books, I've never read the books. And I was like, you just got to give it a go. So having the trailer and actually having something visually come out, because we haven't had anything really since Celebration.
Nah.
When they just talked about it, and unless you were in that panel, you didn't see any kind of visuals. So
right.
It's very hard to get excited about a TV show that you know nothing really about and you haven't seen any of it. So the fact that we've seen a few seconds of it and an extended kind of trailer version at the end of Phantom Menace, I think has really helped with a buzz. And noticed actually a few High Republic costumers here like yesterday, and they looked awesome. So I'm hoping the Acolyte will produce a lot more like High Republic Jedi kind of costumes, but also speaking to KT, like Dark Empire ones as well.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Now that there's a bit more out there, that it does feel like the positive attitude is changing towards it, because there's been plenty of negativity. I was on a round table, a Leslie Headland round table, which will come out on Fantha on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Because there's an embargo, and in that conversation, without giving anything away, there were a couple of pointed questions about the High Republic, specific to the High Republic. And whilst as a portion of the Star Wars story, it's still reasonably small, although growing faster by the day, and obviously sales have been great, and there's interest in it, and there's still more to come with Phase 3 and everything else that's coming our way, you could feel the excitement of those people, those High Republic fans, really wanted to know where this sort of sat with everything, how will it link in with everything. So I think that is, at the moment still, until the show comes out, till it all really gets kicking and moving and people are seeing it beyond, the Star Wars fandom, it's an under-tapped portion of the Star Wars demographic, if you want to put it in those terms.
I think it's a slightly, the High Republic fandom, the hardcore High Republicans are like very, they're really passionate about those characters and about time era, which I think is cool. kind of complaints and maybe hesitation about adopting it by some people.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as we had with Acolyte about, I shouldn't have to have watched all the Rebels and all of the Clone
about
Wars.
Ahsoka, you mean? Yeah,
about Ahsoka. About Ahsoka. I shouldn't have to watch Rebels and like Clone Wars to really kind of get the show, and I felt like maybe I did. But then, as somebody who had watched it, and then yourself, like, I didn't think you really needed to.
No.
So
it helps. It definitely helps.
It helps, yeah.
But I don't think there was anything that wasn't sort of explained enough within the narrative of Ahsoka that it ruined it by any measure.
No, but then we're in a different kind of like world, and I think it will be good for people to have to work a little bit in their fandom. Yeah. So to kind of have to go and seek out some of this stuff as well. Yeah. I think it might make it quite an interesting kind of experiment.
Well, don't you think though that we're now a dozen years deep into this canon, and waggling the air quotes, canon era?
Yeah.
Probably maybe not a dozen, maybe 10.
10, yeah.
Really, since New Dawn and that sort of era of books, and it's been fairly hefty in terms of stuff coming out. Definitely in terms of the Marvel, then the Dark Horse, IDW, and all the other stuff there. All the books that have come out for various age groups, from Disney Press and from Del Rey and Random House Worlds and all the other stuff. There's a lot. There is a lot.
Yeah.
And so really, if you're into this fandom, you're invested in it. You it's right. I mean, you want Star Wars to be for everyone. You always want to assume that the person who's picking up whatever book they're picking up hasn't read anything before, so they can get enough of a hook that they want to read more. But by the same token, you want to gift those loyal readers something from their loyalty.
Yeah,
because they've read it and they're going to get something out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And we're kind of moving from a printed word medium to like a visual medium. Yeah. So things are going to be slightly different, slightly new, and it might even be things that the way people imagine stuff isn't necessarily how they appear and stuff, and that's always a dangerous thing, isn't it? It's like if the image of what you've seen on screen doesn't necessarily reconcile with what you've conjured up in your mind based on the words on a page. Yeah. But there's also kind of, I think it's always fun and exciting. I mean, it's quite hard. You've got to find a balance. We're going to be in a new era of Star Wars, but let's say a small portion of the fandom is like a die-hard fans. I would say a much wider portion of the fandom is at least aware of the High Republic
absolutely
publication.
Yeah.
Even if they don't necessarily know what they are, but they might, should have a rough idea of when it's set. But it's still like a fresh, brand new kind of like visual experience for us. So I think you just got to embrace it and just kind of sit in, grab a cold one, and just enjoy the first couple of episodes when they come out.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I think now as we come to the end of our episode, I'm going to take a walk and I'm going to grab a nice cold fresh one, and maybe even an ice cream, because it's that kind of Sunday. What's the plans for you for the rest of the day?
I quite fancy an ice cream sundae, actually. Plans for me, well, we're here all day for the final day of the Comic Con, and then we've got to pack up and get the hell out of Dodge, and on to the next one. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
We'll pack up and get the hell out of Dodge right now. We'll be back with the next episode very soon. But until then, here's me telling you how and where to find Panther Tracks online.
Visit panthertracks.com or be sure to comment, like and share on our social media feeds at panthertracks. Send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@panthertracks.com. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Panther Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Panther Tracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks, and every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And remember, panthertracks.com, our social media feeds, Panther Tracks TV and Panther Tracks Radio are absolutely so no Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, Kickstarter or Indiegogo required to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's the Fantha from Down Under.